Have you ever looked at someone and made an instant judgment that haunted you for years afterward? Have you ever been so wrong about a person that it completely shattered everything you thought you knew about yourself? Well, let me tell you about the day I met a kid who looked homeless, dirty, and utterly beneath my notice, and how that encounter taught me the most painful and beautiful lesson about humility I've ever learned. I'm not proud of who I was back then, but I'm sharing this story because I know I'm not alone in having been that person, the one who judged a book by its cover, who valued appearances over substance, who thought wealth and success were the measures of a person's worth. This is the story of my transformation, and it all started with one boy whose name I didn't even bother to ask at first, because I thought he wasn't worth knowing. I was 23 years old, fresh out of college with a degree in business administration, working at my father's successful investment firm in downtown Manhattan. I had everything, or at least I thought I did. A luxury apartment in Tribeca that my parents helped me afford, a wardrobe full of designer clothes, a sports car that I'd received as a graduation gift, and a social circle that moved through the city's most exclusive clubs and restaurants like we owned the place. My mornings started with artisanal coffee from that trendy cafe on the corner, the one where a single latte cost more than most people spent on an entire meal. I'd scroll through Instagram while sipping my overpriced beverage, comparing my life to the carefully curated feeds of my equally privileged friends, always making sure my own posts showcased the perfect blend of success, beauty, and effortless sophistication. My afternoons were filled with meetings where I mostly pretended to understand the complex financial instruments we were discussing, nodding sagely while internally planning my weekend brunch reservations. My evenings were a blur of cocktail parties, gallery openings, and dinners at restaurants where the waiters knew my name and my usual order. I thought I had arrived, that I had made it, that I was living the dream that everyone else was chasing. Looking back now, I can barely recognize that version of myself, that shallow, self-absorbed young woman who measured her worth in likes, labels, and luxury experiences. But that's who I was when I first saw him. It was a Tuesday morning in late September, one of those perfect autumn days when New York City feels almost magical, when the air is crisp and clean, and the light hits the buildings in that golden way that makes you forget about the smell of garbage and the constant noise. I was running late for work, as usual, rushing down Park Avenue in my Louboutin heels, my Louis Vuitton bag swinging from my shoulder, my perfectly blown-out hair streaming behind me. I was on my phone, naturally, responding to a group chat about someone's engagement party, barely paying attention to where I was going, when I nearly collided with him. He was sitting on the steps of an office building, just outside the main entrance, his back against the wall, his knees drawn up to his chest. My first thought, I'm ashamed to admit, wasn't concern or compassion. It was annoyance. Why was this homeless kid blocking the entrance? Didn't he know this was a professional building? Couldn't he find somewhere else to loiter? I felt a surge of irritation mixed with a vague sense of disgust as I took in his appearance. His clothes were worn and dirty. His jeans had holes in them that definitely weren't the fashionable kind. His oversized hoodie was stained and frayed at the edges, and his sneakers looked like they'd walked 1,000 miles. His dark hair was messy and unkempt, falling into his eyes, and there was dirt under his fingernails. He couldn't have been more than 16 or 17, but his face had a weariness to it that seemed much older. Next to him was a backpack that looked like it had survived a war, bulging with what I assumed were all his worldly possessions. The most striking thing, though, was what he was doing. He wasn't asking for money, wasn't holding a sign, wasn't even looking at the people streaming past him. He was reading a book, a thick, battered paperback that he held carefully, almost reverently, completely absorbed in whatever world existed on those pages. For a split second, something flickered in my mind, a tiny question about what book could be so compelling, but I pushed it away. I had more important things to think about. I stepped around him with exaggerated care, making sure my expensive bag didn't brush against him, and I caught myself actually holding my breath as I passed, as if poverty might be contagious. The thought makes me sick now, but it's the truth, and I promised myself I'd tell this story honestly. I walked into my building, took the elevator to the 42nd floor, settled into my ergonomic chair in my glass-walled office with its breathtaking view of the city, and promptly forgot about him. Or at least I tried to. But over the next few days, I kept seeing him there, always in the same spot, always with a book, always alone. Sometimes I'd see other people, other professionals in their crisp suits and polished shoes, dropping coins into a cup he'd eventually placed beside him. But he never seemed to actively solicit donations. He just sat there, reading, existing in a world that seemed determined to look through him rather than at him. I started to feel a strange mixture of emotions whenever I passed him. Part of me was still annoyed by his presence. by this reminder that poverty and struggle existed right outside my comfortable bubble. Part of me was curious despite myself, wondering why he was always reading, what those books meant to him, why he'd chosen that particular spot. And part of me, a part I tried very hard to ignore, felt guilty, though I couldn't quite articulate why. After all, I hadn't done anything to him. I hadn't been rude or cruel. I'd simply walked past him like everyone else did. But that guilt gnawed at me, growing a little stronger each day, until I found myself going out of my way to use a different entrance to avoid seeing him at all. That worked for about a week, until the day everything changed. It was a Friday afternoon, and I was leaving work early to meet my friends for happy hour at some rooftop bar in Soho. I was in a particularly good mood because I'd just been praised in a meeting for a presentation I'd barely contributed to, and I was already mentally planning my outfit for a party that weekend. I pushed through the revolving door, already reaching for my phone, when I heard a voice behind me. "Excuse me, miss?" The voice was young, hesitant, and when I turned around, my heart sank. It was him. He was standing now, his backpack slung over one shoulder, and he was closer than I'd ever been to him before. Up close, I could see that his eyes were a striking hazel color, intelligent and alert, and there was something in his expression that wasn't quite what I'd expected. Not desperation, not defeat, but something more like determination mixed with anxiety. "I'm sorry to bother you," he said quickly, his words tumbling over each other. "But I've seen you come through here every day, and you seem like someone who might be able to help me." My immediate reaction was defensive, almost hostile. I didn't have cash on me, I wanted to say, which was a lie. I couldn't help him, I wanted to say, which was also a lie. What I actually said, in a tone that was probably colder than necessary, was, "Help you with what?" He didn't flinch at my coldness, which surprised me. Instead, he took a breath and said, "I need advice about books. You work in that building, so you must be educated, successful. I'm trying to prepare for the SAT, and I'm reading everything I can, but I don't know if I'm focusing on the right things. I saw you carrying that book last week, the one about economic theory, and I thought maybe you could recommend some others that might help me understand complex ideas better." I stood there, completely frozen, my brain struggling to process what I'd just heard. This kid, this homeless-looking teenager I'd been actively avoiding, was asking me for reading recommendations? Was preparing for the SAT? Was reading economic theory for fun? The cognitive dissonance was so strong it almost made me dizzy. "You're studying for the SAT?" I heard myself ask, and I hated how incredulous I sounded, how disbelieving, as if someone in his circumstances couldn't possibly have academic aspirations. "Yes, ma'am," he said, and there was a flicker of something in his eyes. Maybe hurt, maybe anger, but it passed quickly. "I'm trying to get into college. I know it's a long shot, given my situation, but I have to try. Education is the only way out for me." I should have felt ashamed in that moment. I should have immediately recognized my own prejudice and bias. But instead, I felt defensive, almost angry, though I couldn't have explained why. "Where do you go to school?" I asked, and I could hear the skepticism in my own voice. "I don't," he said simply. "I aged out of foster care 6 months ago. I've been homeless since then, but I go to the public library every day, and I'm teaching myself everything I need to know. I took the practice SAT last week and scored in the 95th percentile, but I want to do better. I want to be perfect." The world seemed to tilt slightly on its axis. This kid who I'd judged as lazy, as someone who'd chosen this life, as someone beneath my notice, was teaching himself at a college level, scoring better on practice tests than most of my college-educated friends probably could, and he was doing it all while homeless, while struggling to survive, while sitting on cold concrete steps reading by whatever light he could find. And what was I doing? Coasting on my family's wealth, pretending to work at a job I'd only gotten through nepotism, spending more on a single brunch than he probably had for an entire week of food. The shame hit me then, not gently but like a physical blow, and I felt my face flush hot. I started, but I didn't know what to say. How do you apologize for judgments you never spoke aloud? How do you admit that you've been seeing someone as less than human? He must have seen something in my expression because his face softened slightly. "It's okay," he said quietly. "I know what I look like. I know what people think when they see me. I'm used to it." Those words, delivered without bitterness or accusation, just as a statement of fact, broke something open inside me. I'm used to it. How many times had he been judged, dismissed, ignored? How many people like me had walked past him every single day, never seeing the brilliant, determined, resilient human being behind the dirty clothes and rough circumstances? "What's your name?" I asked, and it was the first real question I'd asked him. The first time I'd treated him like a person deserving of basic courtesy. "Marcus," he said, and a small smile flickered across his face. "What's yours?" "Elena," I said, and I felt like I was introducing myself for the first time in my life, like every other introduction had been performative. But this one, with this teenager on a street corner, was real. "I'd like to help you, Marcus. Can you give me a day or two? I'll put together a list of books and resources for you." His eyes widened, and for the first time I saw genuine surprise on his face, followed by something that looked dangerously close to hope. "Really? You'd do that?" The fact that he was shocked by such a small offer of help made me want to cry. "Yes," I said, and I meant it with an intensity that surprised me. Really, I didn't meet my friends for happy hour that day. Instead, I went home to my luxury apartment, looked around at all my expensive things, all the markers of success and status I'd accumulated, and I felt nothing but emptiness. I spent the entire weekend researching, making lists, reaching out to my former professors, compiling resources for Marcus. But more than that, I spent that weekend thinking, really thinking, about who I'd become, about the values I'd adopted without questioning them, about the person I wanted to be versus the person I actually was. Have you ever had a moment where you suddenly see yourself clearly, where the carefully constructed self-image you've been maintaining just crumbles, and you're forced to confront the truth? That was my weekend. I thought about all the times I'd complained about minor inconveniences, about a delayed Uber or a restaurant being fully booked, while Marcus was figuring out where to sleep safely and how to charge his phone so he could access online learning resources. I thought about all the money I'd spent on things I didn't need, didn't even really want, just to maintain an image, while Marcus was rationing every dollar to survive while still pursuing his education. I thought about all the advantages I'd had, advantages I'd never earned, never deserved, just been born into, and how I'd squandered them, taking them completely for granted. And I thought about Marcus, about his determination, his dignity, his refusal to let his circumstances define his future, and I felt something I'd never really felt before: genuine humility, real respect for someone I'd initially dismissed as worthless. That Monday morning, I showed up at the office building early, before most people arrived, carrying a large bag filled with books I'd purchased over the weekend, along with printed study guides, a list of free online resources, information about scholarship programs, and a folder full of practice tests. Marcus was already there, reading as always, and when he saw me approaching, he stood up quickly, his expression wary, like maybe he thought I'd changed my mind, that I'd been playing some cruel joke on him. "I brought you some things," I said, and I held out the bag. He took it carefully, almost reverently, and when he looked inside, his eyes went wide. He pulled out one book, then another, then the folder of materials, and I watched his face transform, watched hope and gratitude and something like wonder wash over his features. His voice cracked, and he cleared his throat. "This is too much. I can't accept all this." "Yes, you can," I said firmly. "And you will. Consider it an investment in the future. Your future." He was quiet for a long moment, his fingers tracing the spine of one of the books. And when he looked up at me, there were tears in his eyes. "No one's ever," he started, then stopped, shaking his head. Thank you so much. You have no idea what this means to me." But I was starting to understand. I was starting to see that small acts of recognition, of respect, of investment in another person's potential could mean everything to someone who'd been invisible for too long. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Why here? Why do you sit here specifically?" He smiled, a real smile this time, and pointed up at the building. "See that window on the 42nd floor? There's a woman who works there, and every morning when she comes in, she looks so confident, so successful, so like she belongs in this world. I sit here and watch her, and I think, someday that's going to be me. Someday I'm going to walk into a building like this, and I'm going to belong there too." My breath caught in my throat. He'd been watching me. All those days I'd been avoiding him, judging him, he'd been looking at me as inspiration, as a goal to aspire to. The irony was almost painful. I was the last person who deserved to be anyone's inspiration. I hadn't earned my place in that building. I hadn't worked for anything I had. I was a fraud in expensive clothing, while he was the real thing, someone with actual merit, actual determination, actual worth. "Marcus," I said slowly, "I'm the woman on the 42nd floor. That's my office." His eyes widened in shock, and for a moment, we just stood there, both of us processing this revelation, both of us understanding something profound about perspective and assumptions and how we never really know another person's story. Then I've been watching the wrong person, he said quietly. But there was a gentleness in his voice, not accusation. I don't think you have, I said. I think maybe I needed you to watch me, to hold up a mirror and make me see what I've become. You've been aspiring to be me, but I should have been aspiring to be you. He looked confused, and I took a deep breath. You have more determination in your little finger than I have in my entire body. You're teaching yourself what I paid $100,000 to barely learn. You're fighting for your future while I'm just coasting on my past. You're the person I want to be when I grow up, Marcus, not the other way around. That conversation, standing on that street corner while the city rushed past us, changed something fundamental in both of us, I think. For Marcus, it was the beginning of hope. Real hope that someone saw him, valued him, believed in him. For me, it was the beginning of awakening, of understanding that everything I'd thought mattered didn't, and everything I'd thought didn't matter actually did. From that day forward, I met with Marcus every Monday morning. I'd bring him coffee and a bagel, and we'd talk about what he was learning, what he was struggling with, what he was dreaming about. I connected him with a tutor I hired, and I helped him navigate the college application process. I introduced him to people in my network who could help him, and I watched him impress every single one of them with his intellect, his work ethic, and his character. But here's the thing. While I was helping Marcus, he was helping me in ways he didn't even realize. Every conversation we had challenged my assumptions about success, about worth, about what makes a life meaningful. He never complained, never felt sorry for himself, never blamed the world for his circumstances. Instead, he focused on what he could control, on learning, growing, and preparing for the opportunities he was determined to create for himself. I started to examine my own life through a different lens. I began volunteering at a local shelter, not because it looked good on social media, but because I genuinely wanted to help. I cut back on my ridiculous spending and started donating to scholarship funds for foster youth. I actually started doing my job properly, learning the business instead of just pretending, because I realized I'd been given opportunities that people like Marcus would kill for, and I was wasting them. My friends noticed the change in me. Some of them were supportive, curious about this new interest in social causes and education equity. Others thought I was going through a phase, that I was being performative, trying to seem more enlightened than them. A few stopped inviting me to things altogether, uncomfortable with my new tendency to question our privilege and point out the inequality we were usually happy to ignore. I didn't care. For the first time in my life, I was becoming someone I actually respected, someone who was earning her place in the world rather than just occupying it. Have you ever experienced something similar, where someone you initially dismissed ended up teaching you the most important lessons of your life? Comment below and share your story, because I'm learning that these moments of humility are more common than we think, and there's power in acknowledging them. 6 months after our first real conversation, Marcus took the SAT and scored a perfect 1600. A perfect score. This kid who'd been teaching himself while homeless, who'd been studying by flashlight in shelters and libraries, who'd had every disadvantage imaginable, had achieved perfection. When he told me, I cried. I actually stood there on that same street corner where I'd first judged him so harshly and cried tears of pride and joy and overwhelming gratitude that I'd been allowed to be part of his journey. He got into 7 colleges, every single one he applied to, with full scholarship offers from 5 of them. He chose a prestigious liberal arts college in Massachusetts, with a full ride plus a living stipend, and he was planning to study economics and public policy with the goal of reforming the foster care system that had failed him and so many others. The day before he left for college, he came to say goodbye. We met at a coffee shop, a nice one, and I insisted on paying, though he'd started working part-time and had money of his own now. He looked different than he had 8 months earlier, not just because his clothes were cleaner and newer, gifts from various people who'd become invested in his success, but because he carried himself differently. The weariness was gone, replaced by confidence and hope and excitement for the future. I don't know how to thank you, he said, wrapping his hands around his coffee cup. You changed my life, Elena. You gave me a chance when no one else would. I shook my head. No, Marcus. You changed your own life. You did the work. You had the determination. You never gave up, even when you had every reason to. All I did was see you, finally, when I should have seen you all along. That's more than most people ever did, he said quietly. Being seen, being believed in, it matters more than you know. We talked for hours that day about his dreams, his fears, his plans for the future, He told me about the book he wanted to write someday, about the nonprofit he wanted to start, about the kids he wanted to help who were in the same situation he'd been in. And then, just as we were about to leave, he said something that has stayed with me every day since. "You know what the hardest part was all those months I was on the street?" he asked. "It wasn't being hungry or cold or scared, though those were terrible. It was being invisible. It was sitting there day after day and watching thousands of people walk past me like I didn't exist, like I was a piece of trash they had to step around. It was feeling like I didn't matter, like my life had no value just because I didn't have a home or nice clothes or money. But you saw me, Elena. Even though it took you a while, even though you had to overcome your own prejudices, you eventually saw me as a human being with potential and worth, and that changed everything for me. So thank you, not just for the books and the help and the connections, but for seeing me, for treating me like I mattered." I was crying again, and I didn't try to hide it. "You matter, Marcus. You've always mattered. I'm just sorry it took me so long to realize it. You taught me about humility, about real strength, about what character actually means. You taught me that worth has nothing to do with wealth or status or circumstances. You taught me to question my assumptions and to never, ever judge someone based on their appearance or situation. You taught me everything that matters, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to live up to the example you set." He hugged me then, this brilliant young man who'd survived so much and emerged not bitter, but hopeful, not broken, but stronger. And I felt privileged to know him, humbled to have been part of his story, and determined to be better because of what he'd taught me. That was 3 years ago. Marcus is thriving in college now, maintaining a perfect GPA, serving as a peer mentor for other foster youth, and already making waves with his advocacy work. He's interning this summer at a major policy think tank, and he's been invited to speak at conferences about education equity and foster care reform. He calls me sometimes, usually late at night when he's taking a study break, and we talk about everything and nothing about his classes and my work and the world we're both trying to change in our own ways. And me? I'm different too. I left my father's firm and went to work for a nonprofit focused on educational access for underprivileged youth. I make a fraction of what I used to make, and I've downsized to a smaller apartment, and I don't own any designer handbags anymore. But I wake up every morning feeling like what I'm doing matters, like I'm contributing something real to the world, like I'm finally earning my place instead of just occupying it. I think about that day often, that Tuesday morning when I almost stepped over Marcus without a second thought, when I judged him as worthless based solely on his appearance, when I nearly missed out on knowing one of the most extraordinary people I've ever met. I think about how close I came to walking past him forever, to never learning the lessons he had to teach me, to staying trapped in my shallow, materialistic, privileged bubble. And I think about all the other people we all walk past every day, the ones we don't see, the ones we judge, the ones we dismiss as less than us because they don't fit our narrow definition of success or worth. How many brilliant minds are we overlooking because they don't have the right clothes or the right address? How many potentially transformative friendships are we missing because we're too wrapped up in our own privilege to notice the people around us? How many chances to learn and grow and become better are we walking past every single day? The truth is, I thought I was going to teach Marcus something when I first offered to help him. I thought I had wisdom to share, advantages to offer, knowledge to impart. And I did help him in practical ways. I'm not diminishing that. But what I didn't expect was how much he would teach me, how thoroughly he would dismantle my worldview and rebuild it into something better, how completely he would change my understanding of what makes a person valuable and a life meaningful. He taught me that humility isn't about thinking less of yourself. It's about thinking of yourself less. It's about recognizing that your circumstances don't make you superior to anyone, that privilege is just luck, not merit, and that real worth comes from what you do with what you've been given, not from what you've been given itself. He taught me that strength isn't about having power or money or status. It's about persevering when everything is stacked against you, about maintaining your dignity and your dreams even when the world tells you you're nothing, about getting up every single day and choosing hope over despair. He taught me that intelligence and ambition and talent exist everywhere, in every demographic, every economic class, every circumstance, and that our failure to nurture these qualities in everyone is not just a moral failing, but a massive waste of human potential. He taught me to question everything I'd been taught about success and value and what makes a good life, to look beyond appearances and circumstances to the actual person underneath, to recognize that everyone has a story and that story deserves to be heard and honored. And most importantly, he taught me that it's never too late to change, to grow, to become better than you were. I was 23 years old, already set in my ways, already convinced I knew everything, already comfortable in my privilege and my prejudices. But meeting Marcus broke me open and forced me to rebuild myself into someone I could actually respect. Now, I want to ask you something important, and I really want you to think about this. When was the last time you really saw someone, truly saw them, instead of just glancing at them and making assumptions based on their appearance? When was the last time you questioned your own prejudices and privileges? When was the last time you let someone you might have dismissed teach you something valuable? These are uncomfortable questions, I know. They were uncomfortable for me too. But they're necessary questions because the truth is, we all have blind spots. We all make judgments. We all sometimes fail to see the full humanity in the people around us. And those failures don't just hurt the people we're dismissing, they hurt us too. Because every time we walk past someone without really seeing them, we're missing an opportunity to learn, to grow, to connect, to become more fully human ourselves. Marcus didn't just teach me about humility. He taught me about hope, resilience, dignity, determination, and the incredible power of one person believing in another. He taught me that small actions, seeing someone, offering help, showing respect, can have enormous ripple effects that change lives in ways we might never fully understand. He taught me that the measure of a person isn't their bank account or their job title or their address. It's their character, their choices, their treatment of others, especially others who can do nothing for them in return. And he taught me that sometimes the people who have the least to give materially have the most to teach spiritually, and that being open to those lessons requires a humility that many of us, especially those of us with privilege, struggle to cultivate. So I want to leave you with this challenge, the same challenge I give myself every single day. Tomorrow, when you're walking through your life, rushing to work or running errands or going about your routine, I want you to really see the people around you. The person asking for change on the corner, the tired-looking parent struggling with kids on the subway, the elderly person moving slowly in front of you, the teenager who looks lost or scared or alone. Don't just glance at them and make assumptions. Actually see them. Recognize them as full human beings with their own stories, their own struggles, their own dreams, their own inherent worth that has nothing to do with their circumstances. And then, if you can, if the moment is right, do something. It doesn't have to be grand. It can be as simple as a smile, a kind word, a moment of genuine attention. It can be holding a door, offering help, asking if someone's okay. It can be choosing to sit next to someone others are avoiding, to talk to someone others are ignoring, to see someone others are looking through. Because here's what I've learned. Those small acts of recognition and kindness don't just help the person receiving them. They change you too. They chip away at the walls we build between ourselves and others. They remind us of our shared humanity. They make us better, kinder, more humble, more fully alive. Marcus changed my life not because he tried to, but because I finally let him. Because I finally stopped judging and started seeing, stopped assuming and started listening, stopped thinking I had all the answers, and started being willing to learn. And the most beautiful part is that this transformation is available to everyone. You don't need money or status or privilege to treat people with dignity and respect. You don't need anything except a willingness to set aside your assumptions and really see the person in front of you. Before I go, I want to ask you to do something. If this story touched you, if it made you think about your own assumptions and prejudices, if it inspired you to see people differently, please leave a like on this video. Your like tells me that these stories matter, that sharing these uncomfortable truths and personal transformations is worthwhile, that maybe, just maybe, we can all become a little bit better together. And please share your own experiences in the comments. Have you ever misjudged someone and then learned you were completely wrong? Have you ever had someone you dismissed teach you an important lesson? Have you ever been on the other side, been the person who was judged or overlooked, and had someone finally see you? Tell me your stories. Let's create a space where we can be honest about our failures and our growth, where we can learn from each other, where we can support each other in becoming the kind of people who see everyone's humanity and worth. If you want more stories like this, stories about real experiences, difficult lessons, and personal transformation, please subscribe to Through My Eyes. This channel is dedicated to sharing the moments that change us, the people who teach us, and the growth that comes from being willing to be wrong and learn and change. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. And finally, I want to say this directly to anyone who's ever been in Marcus's position, anyone who's ever been overlooked, dismissed, judged, or made to feel invisible because of your circumstances. You matter. Your life has value. Your dreams are valid. Your potential is real. Don't let anyone else's blindness or prejudice make you doubt that for a single second. Keep fighting, keep learning, keep growing, keep believing in yourself even when the world doesn't believe in you. Because you never know when someone might finally really see you. And that one moment of recognition might change everything. And to anyone who's been in my position, anyone who's realized they've been walking through life with blinders on, judging and dismissing people based on superficial factors, know that it's never too late to change. It's never too late to start seeing people, really seeing them. It's never too late to question your assumptions, examine your privileges, and choose to be better. The discomfort of that realization is painful, I know, but it's also the beginning of real growth, real wisdom, real humility. Thank you for watching, for listening, for being willing to think about these difficult questions. Thank you for being part of this community where we can be honest about our failures and our growth. And thank you, Marcus, wherever you are right now, probably in a library somewhere, studying to change the world. Thank you for teaching me everything about humility, everything about what really matters, everything about being human. You saved my life in ways you'll never fully know, and I'll spend the rest of my days trying to pass forward the lessons you taught me, trying to see people the way you deserve to be seen all along, trying to be worthy of the second chance you gave me to become someone better. This is Through My Eyes, reminding you that sometimes the most important lessons come from the most unexpected teachers, and that humility is not about thinking less of yourself, but about thinking of yourself less, and really, truly seeing the incredible worth in everyone around you.